To Americans of a certain age, the Kennedy name sparks powerful memories of Camelot, of JFK, of youthful idealism. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is hoping to tap into that once again.
And a sword, and I am going to take back this country with your help, the help of all the homeless Republicans and Democrats and independents who are Americans first. Thank you all very much.
Bobby Kennedy Jr. announced his presidential run back in Boston in April. A member of America's best-known political dynasty, the nephew of JFK, he calls himself a Kennedy Democrat. Yet, even many of his own family members are steering clear of his campaign. He's an environmental lawyer, a climate activist, now living in California, perhaps best known for his controversial views on vaccines. Kennedy stopped in Vermont this week to speak to members of the Ethan Allen Institute, a conservative think tank. 300 people came out to hear him, and Kennedy gave us a few minutes as well. Mr. Kennedy, thanks for your time.
Thanks for having me.
Well, it's a pleasure. Of course, your uncle challenged President Carter's re-election bid in 1980. What has President Biden done or not done that made you say, I'm going to challenge him for the nomination in 24?
Yeah, I disagree. First of all, I have a long personal relationship and a great deal of affection for President Biden over many, many years. But I do not think that that the decisions that he's made, particularly recently as president, reflect the values that the Democratic Party or our country should be projecting around the world. I want my kids to grow up in a country like I did, that they're proud of, and that is a moral authority around the world. I think the conduct of the war in the Ukraine, which we now know that the Russians had signed a peace agreement with Zelensky in April 2022, and that the White House actually deployed Boris Johnson to go and sabotage that agreement. We could have solved that war. We could have averted it. Instead, there's 350,000 Ukrainian kids who have died over there. And I think that this addiction to forever wars, which have been a long part of President Biden's career, is something that the United States needs to move away from. We've spent $8 trillion on useless wars since 2001. And that money has come out of the pocket of the American middle class.
Would you cut off U.S. aid to Ukraine?
I would settle the war. I would negotiate. I will negotiate the war and end the war immediately.
As fast as Donald Trump says he could do it?
Well, listen, I don't know. Donald Trump was the one who walked away from the ABM treaty and laid the groundwork of provocations for this war. So I think, we were sold this war as that it was a humanitarian effort. My son went over there and fought. My son was a machine gunner for a special forces unit in the Kharkiv offensive. So I have a great sympathy for the Ukrainian people. This is not good for the Ukrainian people. This is a proxy war between the United States and Russia that Ukraine is being sacrificed in. It is a sacrifice zone.
Do you support the debt ceiling deal that Biden worked out with Speaker McCarthy?
I mean, there's aspects of it that I support. There's aspects that I think could have been improved.
But up or down, yes or no? Would you support it?
Well, at the end, because I think they waited so long to negotiate it, I certainly wouldn't have put the country into default. And I don't think that we should be playing that kind of game.
Well, you're in Vermont to speak to a conservative think tank, the Ethan Allen Institute, which might seem a little odd for a Democratic candidate for president. What's your message?
Well, first of all, I'll talk to anybody. I don't think, I don't cancel people, and I don't, and I want to talk to everybody's audience. I'll go on Fox News or CNN, and I have my entire career. As an environmentalist, I was one of the few environmentalists that for 40 years would regularly go on Fox News because I want to speak. I think if you don't speak to people, how are you going to persuade them? How are we going to bridge this big gap of polarization in our country if we aren't talking to people with whom we disagree? I have my values, the same values that my father had, that my uncle had, the traditional democratic values. I've never departed from those. I can talk to people with whom I disagree without departing from those values. If a Democratic group invites me to speak in Vermont, I'll be up here in a second. I'm happy to talk to anybody who wants to hear me speak.
So where are you on the, the political spectrum, so to speak? Because some in your family don't support your run for president.
There's many people in my family who disagree with my position on the war. There's people in my family who support the censorship. I'm against censorship. I'm against the war. I'm against the corrupt merger of state and corporate power that has turned our regulatory agencies into predators against the American middle class. I'm against the control of our foreign policy by militaristic neocons who were exiled from the George W. Bush administration after they got us into Iraq and are now running our foreign policy again. I don't think that reflects democratic values as I know them.
So how's the campaign going? A few weeks into it, a lot of Americans are not very excited about a rematch of Trump and Biden in 24.
We are getting an extraordinary response from the American people, from Democrats, from independents, and from Republicans. And what I'm trying to do is to run a campaign that is open to all Americans, that is a campaign that bridges the divide that is now polarizing our country. We have a kind of more toxic polarization now and more dangerous than at any time since the American Civil War. And we have to figure out a way to start talking with each other and start, instead of just fighting over the issues that divide us, to find those values that we have in common and that we share with each other. And that is what my campaign is about.
Mr. Kennedy, thank you.
Thank you very much.
While public opinion surveys show many Americans would prefer someone other than Joe Biden and Donald Trump as the major party nominees next year, Bobby Kennedy is still far behind in the race for the Democratic nomination. 6 national polls conducted in June and averaged by Real Clear Politics show President Biden now 50 points ahead of Kennedy among Democrats and Democratic-leaning independents.